Summary of The Spy Coast, a thriller written by Tess Gerritsen. Chapter 1. Once a golden girl, her life now unfolded in shades of uncertainty and danger. The catalyst for this transformation was a mysterious man making inquiries about her, a subtle but ominous sign that triggered a chain reaction of events that would shatter the carefully constructed facade of her existence. As she stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection, the metamorphosis began. Her once artfully streaked hair, reminiscent of sun-kissed highlights, was now a shade best described as dead mouse brown. A desperate attempt to blend into the background, to become unremarkable. The monoprix, a refuge for the inconspicuous, became her sanctuary as she shopped for hair dye and eyeglasses, the tools of her reinvention. The first clue that something was amiss had been the stranger's inquiries about her. The notion of someone actively seeking information about her set off alarm bells. She pondered the possibilities: an admirer, a deliverer man, or something more sinister? In her years of calculated living, complacency had taken hold. And she realized she was no longer as prepared as she should have been. So, off to the monoprix in the 3rd arrondissement she went, a neighborhood where anonymity was her ally. The hair dye and eyeglasses were not mere accessories, they were her armor against an unseen threat. A threat that forced her to confront her vulnerability, to realize that her well-laid plans might be unraveling. Studying herself in the mirror, she decided that changing her hair color wasn't enough. She needed a complete break from her former self. Armed with scissors, she began to cut. Each snip a symbolic severing of the threads that wove her old life together. The €300 hairstyle by L'Atelier Blanc fell victim to her desperation, a small price to pay for the obliteration of her past. As locks of hair slithered onto the bathroom tiles, regret turned to rage. Everything she had planned, the risks she had taken, now seemed futile. The golden girl, who had always been 2 steps ahead, now found herself outsmarted. The rules she had skillfully skirted were now closing in on her, and the repercussions were profound. In the debris of her fallen hair, she reached a moment of acceptance. No longer the golden girl, she embraced the idea of emerging from this crucible as something different, something stronger. The bathroom floor became a metaphorical battleground, and she, the reluctant warrior, was ready to face the uncertainties that lay ahead. The remnants of her old self, the discarded hair, were collected in a trash bag along with the empty box of hair dye. She acknowledged the traces she was leaving behind, but had no time to sanitize the crime scene. The Paris police, she hoped, would fall back on their typical sexist instincts, assuming a woman in this apartment had been abducted rather than having orchestrated the chaos. Glasses perched on her nose, tousled brown hair framing her face, she surveyed the transformation. It was a light disguise, enough to confound any neighbors she might encounter on her way out. With the go-bag in hand, she left the remnants of her once carefully curated life behind. In the living room, regret mingled with the gruesome reality of her recent actions. Blood spatters adorned her leather sofa, forming an abstract extension of a Chagall painting hanging on the wall. The source of the blood, a man who had been the first to breach her defenses, lay crumpled beneath the artwork. He had been a typical manly man, with bulging biceps earned at the gym but lacking in the intelligence department. Her first assailant, now a lifeless figure, with a look of surprise etched on his face, a surprise that it was a woman who had taken him down. Her ruthlessness was evident, she was not one to be underestimated. A whisper of breath behind her drew her attention to the second man. Lying at the edge of a Persian carpet, his lifeblood seeping into the intricate patterns. Unexpectedly, he was still alive. Approaching him, she nudged his shoulder with her shoe, a gesture that revealed the extent of his injuries. His futile attempt to reach his weapon showcased the damage she had inflicted. "Qu'est-ce envoy?" she asked in French, seeking answers from a man whose movements had become spastic and uncoordinated. When her queries in French and Russian yielded no comprehension, she switched to English. The language seemed to spark a glimmer of understanding in his fading eyes. Desperation painted his face as he grappled with the reality of his impending demise. The question lingered: who had sent these men? The lack of answers fueled her frustration. The urgency of the situation escalated as men's voices echoed in the hallway outside her apartment. The need for swift action superseded her desire for information. She aimed her suppressor and ended his struggle, leaving behind a silent and lifeless figure. Time was running out. With calculated precision, she scrambled out of the window and onto the fire escape, her last glimpse of the apartment a bittersweet farewell to a life that had been abruptly dismantled. The alley below received her as she dropped down at 11 p.m., the streets of Paris still bustling with life. In the midst of the crowd, she disposed of the trash bag in a restaurant dumpster and continued walking, the go bag slung over her shoulder. The sacrifices were tangible: beautiful shoes, designer dresses, and priceless art left behind to create the illusion of an involuntary disappearance. Her escape was a testament to years of training and resourcefulness. Yet, the questions lingered. Who wanted her dead? Was it the Russians, as she initially assumed, or a more intricate web of adversaries? The comfortable retirement she had envisioned was shattered, replaced by the harsh reality of a life she thought she had left behind. The narrative oscillated between past reflections and the urgency of the present, revealing a protagonist skilled in deception and survival. The suspense heightened as she navigated the streets, evading potential pursuers, and left behind the remnants of her former life. 5 blocks away, her journey continued, a lone figure in the vast cityscape. The go bag held the essentials for the moment, but she possessed more resources, a hint at a complex network of alliances and skills honed over years of covert operations. The promise of a thrilling adventure unfolded as she embraced the daunting task of discovering who wanted her dead. The narrative posed a multiple-choice question of adversaries, raising doubts about the leak of her identity and the motivations behind the sudden threat. The protagonist's resolve to survive and unearth the truth hinted at a formidable resilience, a trait that had once made her the golden girl. The past, it seemed, was catching up with her. The comfortable retirement she had envisioned was replaced by the ominous shadow of danger and uncertainty. With a resigned acknowledgement, she prepared to return to a life she thought she had successfully left behind. So much for a peaceful retirement. It was time to go back to work. Chapter 2. In the quiet solitude of her snow-covered field, the narrator confronts the aftermath of a predator's ruthless attack on her cherished Araucana chickens. The evidence of the slaughter is stark: a trail of blood, scattered feathers, and the lifeless body of a favorite hen. Despite the falling snow, the killer's tracks remain visible, a chilling testament to the recent brutality. With a heavy heart, the narrator surveys the diminished flock, now reduced to a mere 3 dozen chickens from the 50 she nurtured in the spring. The sole surviving rooster struts indifferently, unfazed by the loss of yet another companion. Frustration and disappointment simmer as the narrator contemplates the seemingly useless nature of these roosters, especially the lone survivor. Amidst the desolation, a flicker of movement in the woods captures the narrator's attention. Eyes gleam from the shadows, and a silent confrontation ensues between the observer and the observed. The woods become a snowy battlefield, the enigmatic enemy hidden in the underbrush. Caution in every step. The narrator retrieves a loaded rifle from her Kubota RTV, ready to face the unseen adversary. A thunderous shot echoes through the stillness, sending startled crows into chaotic flight. The remaining chickens, agitated and squawking, seek refuge in their coop. Yet, the woods remain motionless. Undeterred, the narrator ventures into the woods, where the snow conceals a treacherous terrain of brambles and hidden obstacles. The pursuit is marked by explosive snaps underfoot, each step revealing the determination to find the predator. A blood-stained bed of leaves emerges, confirming the accuracy of the shot. The lifeless form of the Araucana hen lies discarded, a casualty in the conflict. Driven by the certainty of a wounded adversary, the narrator presses on, negotiating the challenging landscape with a body weathered by time and experience. A surgically pinned ankle, aching joints, and the toll of aging become apparent, contrasting with the sharpness of vision and survival instincts that still define her. In a clearing, the nemesis is discovered, a motionless fox, sleek and well-fed. The regret of taking a life is palpable as the narrator acknowledges her role in the animal's suffering. The fur, deemed too valuable to waste, becomes a practical reminder of the interconnectedness of life and death. With a sense of duty, the narrator loads the fox's carcass onto her kubota and heads towards a neighbor's house. The conclusion hints at a community bound by shared experiences, where the fox's fur will find purpose in the hands of someone who appreciates its value. As the engine hums and the field recedes, the narrative leaves an indelible impression of resilience, regret, and the complex relationships forged in the wintry landscape.